Okay, in this video, I'm going to try to help you with your homework. Um, this is the first homework assignment, chapter one. Actually, it's the only homework assignment in chapter one. The other assignment is an extra credit assignment. It's a quiz. Um, okay, so this question's asking us to identify whether something is an indirect cost or a direct cost. So I'm not going to go through all of these, but coolant for machinery, that's clearly an indirect cost. That's clearly an indirect cost. Wages of product assembly workers. I might be inclined to say that's a direct cost. Annual flat fee paid for factory security. I'm going indirect. Factory supervisor salary. I'm thinking that's indirect, right? We can't tie it to a specific product. I'm thinking the assembly wage workers, that seems like we would be able to tie that to a specific product. So I'm inclined to say that that's an indirect cost. Okay, next question. Compute ending work in process inventory for a manufacturer using the following information. So ending work in process inventory for a manufacturer. Boy, this is contrary to what we were talking about in the lectures. Compute ending work in process inventory for a manufacturer. So we're saying let's look at the work in process account, and therefore we are going to have a beginning balance of work in process. Then we're going to use direct materials used, direct labor, and then manufacturing overhead. That was everything that we had available to us to use, or all the costs that we have to account for. Then we are going to deal with cost of goods manufactured. That's what we are sending out to finished goods. The difference between these two would be ending balance. So now I think we can go back to the question. And I may not do it for us, but again, it's beginning work in process. And then we would add the things that we would add to work in process. Direct material used, direct labor, factory overhead, work in process inventory, beginning, right? And then cost of goods manufactured. That would be the subtraction. Total manufacturing cost. So again, this is a multi-step process. Total manufacturing costs, total costs, and work in process. That would be the combination of the beginning balance plus total manufacturing costs. And then we would subtract cost of goods manufactured, just like the T account says. And if you are in still need and you want to look at something that's much better than what I articulated in my scribbling just a second ago, you could go back to these slides and refer to this slide, right? Again, this is going to be material used, labor, overhead. That'll be all the costs incurred this period. We would then add our beginning balance, and then we would subtract cost of goods manufactured to back into ending inventory. The question is slightly different than this schedule, which is fine. So we just want to make sure we pay attention to what they're asking. Compute cost of goods sold using the following information. I'm not going to do this question for us, but again, we can approach these in two different ways. We can do the T account analysis, finished goods. Again, I'm going to have beginning balance, and then I will add cost of goods manufactured that came in from work in process. This will be everything I have available to sell. and I still can't spell. Okay. Then I will have cost of goods sold. The difference between cost of goods sold and everything I have available to us is ending balance. I can think of all of these T accounts in formulaic approaches as well. I can turn this into a formula, which would just be beginning balance plus cost of goods manufactured minus cost of goods sold equals ending balance. And then you can sort of solve for whatever's missing, or you can derive the ending balance. In this question, they're asking us determine the cost of goods sold. So they're asking us to determine this one. And we could just like change the formula ever so slightly. It would just be beginning balance plus cost of goods manufactured minus ending balance equals cost of goods sold. Okay, moving on. Question 4. Compute cost of goods sold for a manufacturer. Same concept. Cost of goods sold, right? Again, we're looking at the finished inventory account, right? Again, finished goods is where we find cost of goods sold. So I think a helpful way to approach the questions is try to understand where am I finding this element within those 3 T accounts: raw material, work in process, or finished goods. And then once you identify the right account, then you can sort of reconcile that account. This one's going to go a little bit further, right? But it's going to obviously start with it's going to start with revenue. Then it's going to do cost of goods sold. And my sense is that in this particular question, they're even just going to give it to us, so we don't have to derive it. In this schedule on slide 29, they are breaking out cost of goods sold by reconciling the finished goods inventory account. Okay. And so in our homework question, they're just simply giving us cost of goods sold. We don't have to derive that by reconciling the finished goods inventory account. But again, when we're dealing with a manufacturing company, I'm going to go back to the slide. We are going to incur sales. In fact, maybe I'll just do my own very quickly. Our income statement is going to be revenue minus cost of goods sold. That's going to give me my gross profit. Then I'm going to subtract all of my operating expenses. And my operating expenses will be things like sales and marketing, general and administrative expenses, and then sometimes even R&D. And that would be my operating income. So I can go back to the question. And I believe I will leave this to you. But this would be total revenue. Actually, yeah, cost of goods sold. They're giving it to us right here. That would be total cost of goods sold. Then we would have our gross profit. Is my sense somewhere in that. And then etc., etc. Question 6. Cost of goods sold computation for a merchandiser and a manufacturer. Okay. So remember, a merchandiser, let me back up for a second. Did I misread that previous question? Prepare an income statement for Rex Manufacturing. No, we got it right. We got it right. This is 2 companies Unimart, and Bear Manufacturing. Okay, so Unimart is a merchandiser, so it's not going to have a finished goods account. Bruce Manufacturing is a manufacturer, obviously, and so it does have those three inventory accounts. It's got finished goods, work in process, raw material. Okay. So again, I'm going to leave you to these questions. You can find the income statements up in the slides if that does help. And hopefully you remember the format of an income statement for a merchandiser from financial accounting. Prepare a schedule of cost of goods manufactured. This is, again, this is straight from the slides. It's stuff that we've talked about. And so I think I'm going to leave you again to this specific question. Use the following information for exercises below: inventories, beginning and ending, activity during the year, raw material purchased. This question is compute direct materials used. And just to be clear, direct materials used is the raw materials account. And materials used, remember, we will have beginning balance plus purchases is everything we have available to us. Used is over here. And usually we end up backing into used by taking everything that we have available to us and then subtracting the ending inventory. And again, we can do it in formulaic fashion too. Beginning balance plus the raw materials that we purchased is everything we have available to us. Then I could subtract out ending balance to determine materials used. And that flows from beginning balance plus purchases minus used equals our ending balance. But typically it's the case that we will count that inventory at the end of the year and back into the amount used. Cost of goods manufacturing. This is a more intensive question. Okay, schedule of cost of goods manufactured, compute total manufacturing costs. Manufacturing costs are the costs that we incurred this period. And then cost of goods manufactured, that's going to be a reconciliation of work in process. And I believe I've already gone through that. You can rewind this lecture and go back to some of the first questions where we walk through in more detail the reconciliation of cost of goods manufactured. Same goes with this. This is a much more detailed. So this one is the full-fledged cost of goods manufactured, right? This is going to mirror pretty closely the PowerPoint slides, right? This particular PowerPoint slide is a really nice template for you to use when tackling question 10. And then this one is doing the same thing for various types of companies. So Garcon Company and Pepper Company. And then last but not least, question 12. It's asking us to identify which set of numbers relates to the manufacturer and which ones relate to the merchandiser. Boy, I'm thinking if we don't have raw material, work in process, or finished goods, we're probably a merchandising company. Okay, that is chapter 1. Um, I hope this helps. I would love feedback. I'm new to the recording lectures, and so any bit of feedback would be super helpful. Otherwise, I hope this helps.